Gergen and Mary for being here in this conversation. And we are at Merida on a conference on enriching collaborative practices across cultures. I wanted to talk to you as if we are having coffee or tea or at the bar, and how do we talk about relational practices and how you have kind of lived these ideas in your personal life. So.
Yeah, I'm really actually very glad you raised the question, because I mean we live with the ideas all the time, and we very much have the feeling if these ideas are not part of our lives, then what are we doing with them? I mean, if they're just abstract, floating around in books and so on, that's, why do them? Mm-hmm. And generally we talked about professional practices of various sorts, but then the question, well, we don't actually have practices that we work out on paper and then perform, but is it possible these ideas have filtered down into our lives and seep there and nestled and affected? And I think that's really a good question. One of the feelings I've had is that there's a kind of a general consciousness of construction back there. And the sense that whatever is said could be said otherwise, or not said at all, or said differently, or one could find the contradiction to it. That is, that there's nothing that is put in motion as the real and the right and the good that's necessarily in stone. And so that you're constantly aware of that you're creating the realities as you talk, and you're going to live in them. And if they're not working for you, hey, say it again.
And it doesn't have to be any particular way. And so there's a sense we can do better. Maybe you'd like to tell that story of one of the ways we've tried to do better. By the way, I don't know if you know, but we've been married now, I think, 42 years. Wow. Actually, it will be 43, I guess, this year, since it's odd number.
We're still together. Well, I think there's something that, to me, it's prior to that you also have to understand, too, and that is that I mean, you're conscious of the construction, but the constructions are also actions in a relationship. And in that sense, they're like performed actions. That they're not only talk about the world, but they do the world in certain respects. So you also begin to then say, well, look, when you talk about yourself and your emotions and your likes and dislikes, there are also performances.
And are you saying that to yourself? Like sometimes when you say, oh, change the tone of the voice, are you saying
not always, because you get caught up in the realities. I mean, you're always doing the real. And
performance is real too.
Yeah, I mean, everything is real while you're doing it, but the question, I mean, most of this comes up if it's not going well, we haven't done well. I think the story you're referring to, and I'm not sure. Okay, so I come home late one day from work, and I'm in a kind of a grumpy mood because something hasn't gone well. I come in the door.
No, I'm mad. I'm the one who's mad.
It's a different story.
You just did it. did you do the construction right in this
That's
moment?
Right.
No. Oh, sorry.
Well, if you want me to tell a story, you have to let me tell a story. And then not tell me it's the wrong story.
I don't want you to tell the story.
Don't
Later,
tell that story.
Don't tell that story. Well, anyway, it is the case that when it doesn't work out, for example, right now, when something doesn't work out, then you kind of can step back and let's start again. I'm very sorry. I asked you to tell a story.
I know, and then I tell a story, you say, don't tell that story.
Okay. So let's talk about something else.
Well, I mean, this is the kind of thing. It's like you get into these kind of like jams sometimes, and it's just natural, happen all the time. How to get out of it.
And how do you not make the other meaning, which is, Mary, you're always doing this, or Ken, you're always doing this? How do you not get into that story?
Right. Well, I'll do one of these kinds of ways. Is it's very easy in our culture to find who's at fault at something. Very easy to find. And if you're working, moving and living together, something goes wrong. Oh, you didn't do that. Right? So, and then it's very easy to want to defend yourself, and maybe find out why it was actually the other person's fault. So you get into this kind of blame game, we call it. Now we have this one case which has been awful for us in a way. We don't like really to do shopping very much, particularly in a mall, particularly around Christmas time when you've got to buy these things. So we'll say, okay, let's go together and we'll split up the chores.
Yeah.
You do this and I'll do this, and then we'll meet back here. You know, you go to that store, I'll go to that store, and we'll meet back, and then we'll go, you know, do the next thing. Well, clear always somebody gets back first, and then they say, I could do one more little thing while he's or she's waiting. The other one comes back. Oh, well, where are they? Well, maybe since they're late, I'll just snip over here, and this may go on. We'll miss each other, and then we'll finally get together. Where were you? Okay. And then, well, where were you? Yeah. Well, I only went to do such and such. Well, you shouldn't have done that. I mean, you just get into that, and you can ruin an afternoon because you're like 4 moves into that game, and you've killed a day.
Yeah.
So then you realize, hey, we don't have to do that. It's like you're sucked into a cultural convention. Right. Why don't we just not do it?
That's one of the things that we do that I don't know if we thought we'd talk about, but when something doesn't go the best way, not a terrible way, we don't do terrible anymore, but when it's not the best way, we can go back and sort of analyze it. So for example, we just cannot seem to meet at an assigned place at an assigned time because each of us is out thinking the other one. And so that we know about ourselves, and so we're forgiving that we're not good at that, right?
Some of us are more forgiving than others.
So what is the performance of forgiveness, and what does that mean or look like? Like, I mean,
I don't have such a problem with this issue. I don't know why. He has more problem than I do.
Yeah, well, I think that always, I mean, you carry traditions with you, and they don't always work together. So one of the traditions I grew up with, living with 3 brothers and so on, is saying you're sorry is like a defeat. And I didn't grow up doing that very well. Wasn't one of my best. So I have trouble sort of, and it's a little bit like the blame game too, because I mean, here's a case where constructionism really works. I don't necessarily have to say that because that's not the only thing I am. I mean, that's not like, oh, I'm only sorry. So sorry becomes a performance. And once I get into that head, then it's a little easier for me. So it's become easier, but it's not just something I traditionally do. It's like
so is it a choice? When you say sorry becomes a performance, is it something that I'm now, I like the way you say the consciousness of construction. Are you consciously saying, okay, I can choose to be different and I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I mean, you may feel differently about this, but if things are just going well, I don't think it comes into play very much. It's mainly when you hit the rough spots or when you want to save something that's really good, like in remembering.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are times, lots of times, when I just have the greatest time with him. And I want to, and I just want to step back from it for a moment, just to say, wow.
Yeah. We've had this feeling sometimes when you look back on a period, you don't quite remember anything, and you're really sorry you let it go, or how could it have gone? Where were we last year at this time? And I can't think. And that trying to create memory by articulating it. So we'll probably, when we leave Merida, when we're on the plane home, we'll probably have a set aside of time to talk about what were really the greatest moments of being there. What did we really value?
So bringing that appreciation, the wow feeling, kind of engaging with it in a way that you're stepping away, but you're still carrying it with you.
Right. And then do you want to talk about the drop box?
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you made it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, we had this experience about Christmas time we got, you know, the usual letters where everybody's doing great. Our whole family's great, I'm great, everybody's wonderful. But someone sent us something where they each of the couple, they would say, what was the best film you saw? What was the best moment in nature for you that year? What was the biggest disappointment? What did you feel good about as an accomplishment of your profession? And they would just do these things. And it was really interesting for us. I mean, I read it with great interest. And they had different things, too. So then I thought, we started thinking back, well, what would we answer? And we thought too much was like blurred about the year. I mean, what movies did we actually see last year? Well, you have to think about it for a bit. Then you say, well, which one was I mean, what was the best accomplishment? You really have to do some thinking. We thought, well, we're losing those things. So what we've done this year, this is the Dropbox. We have a file called Nominations.
Oh, neat. I see.
And we keep it in Dropbox so both of us can go on it. And anything that really is really good, and could be disappointing, like a death, for example, you go on Dropbox and you put in there, what was the best dish you know, if you ate something really nice, you put, what was the best dish? And this is a nomination for that. Or what was the best experience in nature, or something like that.
Best sex.
So play, bring in things that you can
and
play
you can add a category if you think of something, and then you add a category because it isn't there yet already.
So in either one of you just puts that question out, and then whenever you have that experience, you can drop your
You can drop it in there as a nomination.
Right.
Dropbox, is that where you upload files, that kind of Dropbox? Or, okay.
It's like a cloud.
No, it's a metal box.
I just want to show you know.
No,
it's like a cloud, and it's on Mac, and you just it's a little box, and you can put a thing in there rather than sending it by email.
Got you.
Or putting it on a flash
See, we're
drive.
not totally.
I don't think you are. I don't think.
Pretty close, but yeah.
I just one of the other things we do is we used to, when we had made the photographs, actually printed them. I mean, nobody does that anymore either. But so we'd have these pictures of our kids, but knowing they would see these little albums, we were very careful about what goes in there, and we take things out if they're not looking happy, like.
So we were constructing them as having a happy childhood. So none of the bad pictures of the kids ever got in. Of course, we didn't do any bad pictures of us either.
Yeah, those went out the door.
Right away, they never made the album.
Right.
So then this is a construction of memories in terms of what you want to hold, with what intention, that it creates the future, or is it just about the memories?
Well, it's partly what you carry from your life, and whether you look back on it, oh, I don't know, that was pretty bad or difficult or barren or whatever, and it's a way of kind of filling it up with really good things. So it becomes a resource. I mean, I used to do this, what I'd call a Regentag book, or rainy day book.
Rainy day book, which is?
Well, it's, you know, because always there are disappointments in life, things, but there are also some good pieces. And sometimes you feel like, oh, this is not going well, and so you've saved these things where somebody writes and says, oh, I just love what you wrote, blah 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 blah.
Right. I got one the other day from my student.
And rather than just throwing them away, they just become part of a thing that, well, if you're really feeling down, go back and look at that a little bit. It's not so bad.
Oh, it's a rainy day, so it can give you that lift to the up.
Right.
That does. That I'm going to have to do that one, because you get the other ones too from your students, right?
Exactly.
Are you teaching? Are you teaching anything? So what is we supposed to be learning? And then
you throw those away. Because it's so much easier somehow to be hurt by something that's a little critical than it is to feel totally out of this world. If you know, like course evaluations, you get 19 great ones and 2 that say, wish I hadn't taken the course, or would have learned more in basket weaving or something.
I want to go back and talk about emotions for a little bit, because we passed by that. It's another story that's sort of interesting. Okay, you know, we sort of treat emotions as being natural. It's like they just happen and they're like genetic. Well, if you look at it from a constructionist standpoint, you know, the various categories of emotion we have and the way we do them are all parts of cultural history. We've made them up.
Yeah.
And you can do them or not.
But are you saying my emotions are made up?
Yeah.
In the sense of what I'm feeling in that moment or something?
Well, whatever it is you're doing is part of a tradition. I mean, you just don't like collapse in a moment. You don't just shout out, you know, I'm furious. Like, and you say, why? And I say, well, I don't know, it just happened. I mean, you're furious at certain things, not anything. So you really realize that you're kind of constituted as an emotional being by virtue of your cultural history, and you don't have to repeat it. So we have these times early in our marriage where Mary's idea, if you're kind of irritated and angry, then you just put it away and go on to something else. I mean, which is really nice. It's like something happens, and then, oh, well, forget it. Well, I grew up kind of by, I think, largely influenced by my father, he was a sulker. That is, something happened and he could go into this shell and punish you for days by not talking.
To you, yeah.
Really, this is difficult. Well, that was my sort of, I learned how to do that pretty well. Well, this wasn't working because we'd have this little boom. She'd just get over it in 20 minutes, I'd be there.
She's happy, skipping left.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the worst. I'll sulk some more for that.
That's fuel too. And she's like, oh,
Come on.
Anyway, so it wasn't working.
Do not say you sulked overnight, because you never did.
Oh, yeah, that's another
You
issue.
used
But
to
a
like
long
to
time.
really
I could go on
exaggerate.
for hours.
yeah. It's a little drama helps to bring out the point.
Yeah, right.
And we both realized, well, let's not do that anymore. Let's find some other ways of dealing with this. And
so I learned to be more controlled in the way I might express myself, because it works better. It is much better not to have angry interludes.
So how is that relational in terms of, are you looking out for your relationship? Are you looking out for yourself, for him? When you say you have to be more careful, what are you being caring about?
Us?
I think one thing, again, this is consciousness of construction, that you need each other to create and sustain what's valuable. I mean, this really has come to the fore a couple of times when one of us has been abroad alone, and you get off the plane, you're in the city, and you don't actually know what to do anymore.
Why you're there? What's the fun of Paris when you're alone?
But when we're together, you're always making, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to do that? And you need the other one. Hey, that would be fascinating. Did you see that this was going on? Wouldn't that be great to go there? And the other one can generate the enthusiasm, and then it's really worth doing.
So there's some sharing there. You're creating together, but you're sharing.
Oh yeah,
and your enthusiasm or your passion or your interest, and you're putting together something.
So you realize you need the other to keep that reality going. So take care of that relationship. Treat that as the most valuable thing you have is a relational process.
You know, we haven't, I don't know, maybe we should talk about how we do that, but we have kind of talked about that.
A little bit, but I was thinking about another thing that to me is really important that a lot of people don't do, and for us it's been very central, and that is trying to make meal times a kind of a ritual. That is, in the sense that you take time and you treat it as an event. And it doesn't take a lot, but like just for dinner, put some candles on the table. Make it a little bit of an event, just a little special.
Right.
If it's breakfast, do a little something extra that's different, just so you can
It's kind of
be there
marking
together.
that you're doing something here together. It's not just you're coming and eating and just
Yeah, just eating.
Yeah.
Or eating off the, you know, that. We've agreed nobody gets to read the paper until we've had breakfast together and talk.
Oh, that's
Because otherwise you're just there, you know.
yeah, you're in your little world then.
So it's always that care of the relationship insofar as possible. You also have to be careful because if you draw a ring around that circle of who you are as a couple, there's something that's isolating about that. And we understand this, we'll get to multi-being in a minute. And we're also parts of a lot of other relationships. Children with friends, grandchildren, so on and so on and so on. Colleagues. So if you're going to care for the relationship, you have to care for the relationships in which it's embedded.
So it's not just the family. It's
Not just the family. It's not just her, not just the family. It's on that and that and that. Now that means some balancing off. You've got to be willing that, for example, if she wants to go off on a Saturday to spend time with a grandchild, which she really, 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 really loves to do, I got to back off because that's really important to her welfare. And not say, I wanted to go and do blah, blah, blah. You know, give some space, give some time. Because it's really going to, it's the whole relational complex that you've really got to care for.
I like that relational complex.
Yeah. The multi-being issue, I mean, it's sort of come up as part of the writing. And it has to do with this being made up of a lot of different relationships. So that, you know, everything I'm saying comes out of other relationships of which I'm a part. All the words are words that have been used together with other persons. The way in which you do anger, the way in which we do everything. So it's trying to recognize, and you might say that anything the person is not who they are. They're also other things. And the way in which you can use that in many ways, and so either use it as resources, or if I've done something in one voice, she can say, well, you sound like your father. And I really, well, it's my father's voice. I can do another voice, and things like that. Or that you've got always another voice which could be brought in, and that maybe you want to enrich that array. That is, not to tie each other in to this narrow band of who you are as your sole identity, but keep trying to sort of press on the boundaries of things becoming sort of solidified, so that you are one person. I know who you are, I know what you say, blah, 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 but keep pushing those boundaries outwards. Take some risks.
So what happens to this notion of authenticity? I mean, it's a very growing notion, everything like from business to school to education. I see this word of authentic, be authentic. From what you're saying, there is this kind of an array. There is more, I'm thinking like a rainbow, you know? Like there are multiple images of you that kind of shine out. And personally, it resonates for me to be that way. But how do you then engage people on this idea where they're like, but who's the core? So who are you, Mary? Who are you, Ken? How do you?
We sort of go away from those words. I think there's a way in which what we think of as authentic maybe is just an easy flowing interaction. Maybe is what feels authentic. We're arguing with important therapist last night about spontaneity, and I think that word has similarities to authenticity, that somehow spontaneity means a response that comes out of nowhere, and I guess authenticity is the response that comes out of the true self, and each of them is much more complicated than that. I don't know how you'd like to talk about it, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's good, and it raises questions about what's authentic, and that's a kind of a tough one, because we want certain things to be authentic, even though conceptually we know they're performed. So you come up with this kind of, well, it's a borrowed concept of a serious game. This is authentic. We know it's kind of a game, but that doesn't make it trivial.
Right.
Or, and I don't mean game in a you know, let's
Not in, yeah.
play a game. But
Right.
we know it's performed, but that doesn't mean it's trivial.
And I think for me, the reason it came up is in learning education right now, in higher education, it's authentic learning is taking place. There's some learning that's more real or more core, and the emphasis on how to create conditions for learning that'll make that happen. And it gets back to that singular truth, you know, this is real learning versus this isn't.
Superficial learning.
Right.
I think it should be called post-exam learning. You know, what's left after the exam is
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But I want to go
Like-
back to one of these points because I think it got kind of lost, and that is that it's so easy to fall into that tradition of true self and identity, who this person really is. I mean, like a therapist who's sort of trying to find out what the real problem is, as if there's a real problem behind everything they're saying. It has a key to it, that you could turn the key. And the way in which day-to-day living will tend to day-to-day living will tend to collapse down all these sorts of possibilities and potentials. So they kind of are either lost or abandoned or become moribund, and the person just becomes, well, yeah, I know everything you got to say, said it before, ho-hum, and kind of. So how to keep that
Yeah.
a little bit off-center, you know, keep it a little bit
Keep the
not
little
quite
fizz
right.
going a little
Yeah.
bit, keep a little
Yeah.
spark in there, yeah.
Yeah.
The unexpected kind of.
And maybe even sometimes explicitly try. I mean, this year we, for example, started tango lessons. And we don't need to do that,
Yeah.
but it's a whole fun thing. It just opens up a whole nother thing. Or we've gone into theater before. We've done sort of neighborhood theater, college theater.
Community theater kind of small or.
I think one of the most daring things we ever did that way is that I used to work on grants that he got. And then we decided one year, no more grants, no more job for Mary. Like, we were going to change our lives. I was going to go in a different direction so that it wasn't just little Mary tugging along beside Big Ken. You know,
Never.
I was going to have more of my own sort of professional identity.
And was that, so did that lead to the creation of other opportunities, or was it more like just even the intention that no more of tugging along with Mary and Grants together and then leaving open for what is to emerge?
It turned out, of course, to have a lot of consequences that were good. And I also must say that it also related to his epistemological shifts. So that some burden was lifted from him and some opportunities were opened for me. So it worked in a lot of ways all at once.
I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you think that we should?
You can tell the
to this
story now.
I really don't know which story you want me to tell. I mean,
But we talked about creating stories. The whole narrative side. I mean, we've done research and worked in the area of narrative a lot. And we think of stories as being important in understanding lives, our own lives, children's lives. Gets more complicated when you have the notion of multi-being, so that you have a lot of facet to your lives. But this is about the day I was angry.
oh, so you tell that story.
When I was angry because he was late coming home. Obviously, he comes home late quite often, but actually, it doesn't seem the same anymore. But I was not happy for some reason. I'd gone over into that unhappy moment, and he comes in the door, and I said, "Where have you been? Why are you so late?" And he looked at me with this little grin, and he said, "What story would make you happy?"
Wow. Yeah.
And I had to laugh.
Right.
Because obviously he knew, I mean, it was consciousness of construction all the way down. And the fact that he would bring it forth at that moment both made me laugh because it was a funny reference to constructionism, but it also was a way of saying, I want to please you. That's how I took
there
it.
No,
was
it's perfect.
multiple meaning there. That's the beauty of it too, in terms of, and again, for me, you know, I'm pro play, so there's that playfulness introduces. You can't stay angry there.
Oh yeah, I know, and I know. He did it the other day when he was an hour late, and I was sitting in the rain, and he was lost in the rain on a golf cart. I was under a shelter, I have to say. It was raining and it was dark, and I thought, oh man, where is he? He played too much golf, and so he comes up on his cart right to where I am, and he gets out, and he's soaking wet, and he looks miserable, and he said, please don't be angry with me.
So I've had a hard time because my friend had lost us on the course, and I couldn't get him to turn around. So, yeah. Pleading.
Sometimes it's just a request. I mean, what you're saying is that's also a construction where he gets to say how he wants you to perform.
Yeah, well, I knew what her performance was going to be in that case.
Right.
And I said, please don't do that right now.
But you could, that's where I've heard about couples, you know, like you could also have already revved up because you knew that she was getting angry. So you come in angry, she's angry, and neither one is conscious, and boom, they go.
Yeah.
Versus you came in, what do I want to construct, what do I want to create here? And you put that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. I mean, we do it with Gus, you know. We use the chess metaphor, though it has other implications. We say, now think about what moves you're doing.
Yeah.
How you move, what are you trying to create here?
Yeah.
How do you want Dada to respond? How do you want me to respond?
Oh, wow.
So I think about it as parenting, which is already talking to children. I believe all concepts, even like respect, is an abstract construct, you know, for a child. When I ask him, so what is respect? I don't know. You tell me to say thank you, so I say thank you. So it's not a concept he's gotten here, really, but we think they know what is respect. So I play with teaching him constructionist ideas by talking in terms of, what are you doing here? How are you creating your life?
That would be a good book.
Wow, among many, right?
Right.
Well, thank you for this conversation. I know we could go on, and it's really rich. I like that we moved away from a more academic to a more personal. But
no, I really like that. I'm really glad you did that.
So
it's a good,
I
great
appreciate
idea.
it.